Jeff Pasquino. How are you, my friend?
Doing good, Mike. How you doing?
Doing really well. And, of course, the Thursday night game starts tonight. We got intriguing fantasy options with the Packers in play and the Bears, of course, who have some kind of sneaky guys themselves. So, for the Thursday night fans out there, Jeff, who should be in the lineup tonight?
Well, I think you got to start with Aaron Rodgers. But I think that for Green Bay, I'm looking a lot at Ty Montgomery. I like him a lot for a lot of usage. I also like Martellus Bennett at tight end. I think that it's going to be a rough week for tight ends unless you can get somebody from Philly or Kansas City this week. So I think he's a good option. Randall Cobb looks like he's going to be a go. The only guy for the Bears I really like is Cohen, especially in PPR leagues.
Yeah, Cohen, I just made a trade for him in my league this week, and hopefully it pans out for me. All right, if you have guys, questions for Jeff, 609-403-0973. Let's get into it, Jeff, and take a look at some quarterbacks for week number 4 that you might like here. How about Dak Prescott coming off, doesn't throw the ball a whole heck of a lot, but some big plays last week. Is he starting to rise the fantasy list?
He is, and he's had some tough matchups so far, but has still produced. So this is an even better matchup for him against the Rams. And he offers that double threat of both rushing and passing. So I think he's a solid quarterback 1 this week.
We also have Phillip Rivers, 3 picks last week, but going up against a banged-up Eagles secondary. Are you afraid of the 3 picks, or are you going with Rivers against the Birds?
He tends to fall apart in the division rather than against it. So I think that he's probably going to have a decent game against those banged-up Birds.
Matthew Stafford's been a great play for owners this year, but he's got a tough Vikings defense. How about Stafford this week?
Yeah, I think he's more of a quarterback 2 this week. Minnesota's defense looks pretty good, especially with Xavier Rhodes back.
Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. Cam Newton 2 years ago was a fantasy MVP. Are you starting to even consider benching Cam Newton in fantasy?
That's a good question. It's a hot debate this week and last. We thought if you're going to step up, it would be against the Saints last week. He didn't. But a lot of people like his targets this week, so I'm kind of on the fence. He's more of a quarterback 2 for me.
Okay, how about Shawn Watson? Kind of had a coming-out party last week, but is he a consistent scorer in fantasy football?
Again, he's one of those guys that can hit you with running and the passing. Tennessee's defense has looked terrible so far. I think he's a borderline quarterback 1. He's a solid option going forward.
Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com, setting your week 4 lineup. If you have questions for Jeff, send them to us now at 609-403-0973. Let's move over to the running backs here, Jeff. Always stories in the running back situation. We know locally in Philly, no Darren Sproles. Is there a guy, 39 carries, 193 yards, but not a real featured back last week? So if you're playing a Philly guy, which one is it?
In non-PPR, I go Blunt, and PPR, I go Smallwood, just because of where they're going to be used on the field.
Okay. How about here's a guy that I find to be pretty interesting this week. Those games in London are always kind of squirrely over there. We had a 44-7 game last week, but how about Jay Ajayi this week against the Saints? That defense of the Saints, don't you always want to match up somebody against them?
Yeah, Ajayi didn't seem healthy last week, and no compliments to Jets defense, but he get less than 20 yards on the ground. He just didn't look like himself. I think he gets right this week.
Okay, C.J. Anderson had the big week 2 weeks ago. He was kind of quiet last week in a matchup against the Raiders, who got blitzed last week by Washington. So what about C.J. Anderson?
I like Anderson, but part of the problem now is you got a split backfield with Charles back there, and he catches passes out of the backfield. He even gets used in the red zone. So I think Anderson more of a running back 2 this week.
Okay, how about in Seattle? Is Chris Carson a guy that you're going to start playing every week now? I mean, their offensive line's terrible.
Yeah, that's the question, though. But he's going to get a lot of volume because there's really not much else. Prosise is hurt. Carson is probably going to be he's going to be getting 20-plus touches this week. The Colts are decent against the run, though, so I think he's more of a running back, too. But he looks good going forward.
Melvin Gordon against the Eagles. Eagles last week did a good job against a terrible Giants rushing attack. Does Gordon find more room this week against the Birds defense?
He should, because he pretty much owns that backfield, and I think that as long as he's healthy, he'll be a solid running back 1 this week.
We're talking with Jeff Pasquino from the footballguys.com. One more running back I want to throw your way. We talked about C.J. Anderson, and he didn't have a great week, but Jamal Charles, do you anticipate him being a fantasy factor, maybe not this week, but down the road?
I do, and I think that they're going to try and split that backfield up some so they keep them both healthy for the playoffs, because those guys, they have some injury history, so you want to keep them both healthy as long as you can.
Okay, if you have a question for Jeff, 609-403-0973. We'll have our rapid-fire questions coming up after a couple wideouts. Let's throw Jeff's way. And how about this one for you here to kind of start things off? The big guy, Brandon Cooks, had a big game last week. Do you see a repeat performance? Is he ready to break out against the Panthers?
I think so. I think that we saw that what Drew Brees did to them last week, and I think that you're going to see Tom Brady hit all three of his targets. You see Cooks, Hogan, and Gronkowski getting a lot of targets this week.
Adam Thielen is a guy that's starting to emerge. Is he now has he moved up a tier in fantasy?
I think he has, and I have him over Diggs this week just because Diggs is getting the tougher cornerback matchup.
How about Rashard Matthews and Mariota down there? That combination seemingly putting up some points.
He is putting up points, especially in PPR leagues, but he's still struggling to find the end zone. But I think he gets there this week.
Chris Hogan has been a big-time scorer. Are you starting to count on him as a top three? If you need three wide receivers in your league, is he a guy that you need to play every week?
I think so, because especially with no James White really being involved, those two wideouts we talked about for the Patriots are definitely must-starts.
How about we turn him back the clock? Larry Fitzgerald, get him in your lineups?
Yeah, I think he had a great matchup last week. He's got another great one this week against San Francisco. Probably another 10 catches coming ahead. Okay,
let's get your questions for Jeff. If you have a question for Jeff Pasquino from thefootballguys.com, send us a text at 609-403-0973. We got a bunch of them. Let's see how many we can pop in this week.
Yeah, Jeff, I get to go rapid fire here from the text message board. Palmer, Winston, or Rivers? A texter wants to know.
I think, surprisingly enough, Carson Palmer has the best matchup, so I would go with him.
Who should I play at flex? Jamison Crowder, Wendell Smallwood, or Wendell Smallwood, he's trying to say, or Jordan Matthews?
I think Crowder has a great matchup for Washington this week, so I would go with it in that direction.
Would you trade Dez and Funchess to get Landry and Gillisley, somebody asks?
No, because you're mixing in running backs and wide receivers, but I think Dez Bryant he's done okay so far, but he's really going to step up because he's had some tough matchups.
Have to bench one. Crabtree versus Denver, Tyreek Hill versus Norman, Paul Richardson versus the Colts, or should I pick up Marshall?
I think I'm leaning towards Crabtree this week. I think the Oakland could still get the ball going in the air this week.
Second time we've heard Jameis here. Jameis Winston or Deshaun Watson?
I really trust Jameis Winston a little bit more, but that's a close one. I like Winston a little bit better.
Start two in a PPR league, DeMarco Murray, Chris Carson, Javorius Allen, or James White?
I would go with Murray and Chris Carson.
A receiver that Mike brought up a minute ago, somebody asking Thielen or Garcon?
Oh, Thielen, definitely.
And tight end, which is a better start this week, Martellus Bennett or Jason Witten?
I like Jason Witten against the Rams, but I think both are solid options, but Witten looks better.
Okay, there's all the time we have for your questions.
Good
Don't
job,
forget, Jeff will be back next week. But before we go, Jeff, who are some of the under-the-radar sleepers that should be in lineups this week?
I think we need to mention the Denver passing game. Trevor Siemian is going to be under-owned quarterback. He's a quarterback one, and both his wide receivers, Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, are both solid options. We talked about Phillip Rivers. Both of his top targets, Keenan Allen and Tyrell Williams, are strong options. Wide receiver Deshaun Jackson is going to see the ball a little bit more because of the cornerback matchup. And A.J. Green is my top wide receiver overall. Running backs, I think Zeke Elliott and Todd Gurley in the same game look good. Dalvin Cook is going to go overlooked, as is Christian McCaffrey, and I loved him in PPR leagues. And lastly, I mentioned tight ends are really tough. I like Charles Clay and Jared Cook as sleepers.
There you go. Some sleepers for you guys this week. Jeff Pasquino from thefootballguys.com setting your Week 4 fantasy football lineup. I made a trade in my league, Jeff, this week. I picked up a guy you mentioned, Cohen, for DeAndre Hopkins. I made that deal earlier because I was really deep at wide receiver. So I got Kareem Hunt. Who else do I need, right?
Yeah. Now it's just a death. You know he's going to get hurt.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking about going with West as a pickup in my league, but we'll see how Kareem Hunt goes. He's on pace for about 300 carries. All right, another week of fantasy football coming up. Get these guys in your lineup tonight. Jeff Pasquino, footballguys.com. Good luck, Jeff.
Good luck, everybody. Enjoy the games.